Let's begin, shall we? Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here this early on a Sunday morning. It's terrible, I know. I'm Andy Verboom. It's my fault you are here, so I apologize. I am a poet who's currently living in London. I do some editing work. I also do some organizing of reading events and other art events in the London area. And I was asked this year to put together a panel called London Writers Today, which it's a unique component of WordsFest where other panels are this in-conversation format where there are some short readings. Most of the time is taken up by conversation among the panelists, and then there's a few audience questions. London Writers Today is more of, or at least I like to think of it more as a showcase of emerging writers currently working in London. As a showcase, as a showcase, most of the hour will just be performances by the poets. I've got a few questions that I'll kind of pitch to the whole panel, and we can take some time and answer if you want to answer. Throw a question back at me if you think I'm asking something stupid, which is possible. And then we'll do a second round of readings for all of them. So there's a possibility, I've been told, that you might get at least two of the panelists confused. So to help keep everything straight, I've already done it this morning, so you're okay. To help keep everything straight, I'm going to introduce each of them one at a time, and then let the person I've just introduced go up and perform a little set for you. So the introduction is going to stretch over pretty much the first half of the panel, if that's all right with all of you. Okay, so if we have time at the end, after the second round of performances, we'll field some audience questions, but we're going to try to just keep the focus on the performers. So, as I introduce each of you, if you want to go up and read at the podium, that's cool. If you want to perform in this space with or without a microphone, that's cool too. So the first performer we have is Deemus, a young spoken word artist from London, Ontario, who's won multiple community awards, including the 2016 Single Women in Motherhood organization's London's Got Talent competition. He creates from the heart.
Hello, everybody. Kadeem. I go by the name of Deemus. And I've been writing spoken word for 7 years or so. And do you want me to just perform like right now?
Yeah, cool. You can dive right in.
Awesome. I'm gonna use the podium. Let's do that. I have my hands free. Testing. Okay. How's everyone doing this morning? Good? Awesome. So the first poem, wow, it's actually loud, it's nice. The first poem I want to perform for you guys, it's called Chicken, and more or less it's a love poem, I guess you can say. And I'll read it out. I was trying to craft a poem about her, but I guess I haven't yet learned to lie to myself. Besides, I do have until Valentine's Day, right? So I'll write this instead, write these emotions instead. I think I might call this Icarus, either that or chicken. Okay, maybe hot potato. Either way, I guess you can say I'm starting to feel the heat, so I really can't put my finger on it. No, I really can't put my finger on it, which is also ironic because I'm obsessed with running my fingers through them. Let me tell you, her curls pounce on your attention like a tigress who only attacks from behind. In other words, she never leaves the back of your mind. I can't say I want to get entangled and lost, but I can't say I want to pull away either. See, I guess this is where the poem begins. I'm sure if I ran my fingers through her curls with some effort, I could get through without making a mess, but I've never been one to gamble, and I failed that probability unit test in grade 6, so I don't know about my luck. Yes, this is definitely where the poem begins, because I'm not talking about the simple answer straight hair of other girls. Now this one, she's mixed. There's life in her roots, there's complexity in her roots, that my mind is far beyond curious to understand. There's such radiant beauty in the metaphor that is her hair that I need to run my fingers through in order to understand my awe for you, girl. See, Icarus became entangled in something so beautiful and captivating to him. I think people overlooked that part of the story. I think people never held onto or grasped that part of the story. I'm sure he never regret what he became lost in. I'm sure he reached out with open arms and let his fingers become intertwined with the ginger curls he felt from the sun and never pulled away either. I'm learning there's this kind of poetry, a deep kind of polka too, past the color which fades into her roots, into the crown of her head, that I'm beginning to also forever get lost, or want to get lost into. Thank you. So that one I wrote for this girl I was just meeting. I'll explain it this way. When you're just meeting someone and you don't necessarily know where you want things to go with that person, whether you don't know if they're just someone you want to either date or be friends with, or somewhere in the middle, or just trying to figure out, understand where you guys stand. So I wrote that at the time, and now she's the girlfriend, so kind of explains what happened. Yeah. So the next poem, though, I want to perform for you guys. I don't have a title for it, but it's self-doubt, we'll say. So I'll just get started with that. It's hard breathing air sometimes. It's hard waiting for the sun to rise sometimes. The night used to be my favorite time of day, but I always found myself in this dark, twisted place. I haven't ran track and thought on this page in a minute, but this one's a little far too familiar of a track, like my far too faithful sponsors, disorientated, deserted, disconnected. I'm dehydrated, so they hold out bottles to me. They just want to see me win. They just want to see my finish line. They just want to see a flat line. Because everything that has breath will eventually die. Everything that has breath will eventually die, so we make use of a time to live forever. I fear my creativity won't live long enough to tell my story. I fear shortcomings. I fear the absence of light. Yes, I fear the dark. I fear time, so I'm trying to learn to use it wisely. I don't know how much more time I have before my borrowed time becomes suspended. I don't fear school, but I was never good at it. I failed all my classes I was always late for. So if you fear God, I ask, it's me that you pray for. Thanks.
Thanks, Deemus. All right, our next reader is Marta Croll-Baehre, who is a Newfoundland-born poet with affiliations spanning from Western Newfoundland's April Rabbit poetry reading to Poetry London, and most recently her collaboration with poet Shane Neilson for London's Couplets reading series. Full disclosure, I run that. Her work has been, that's just me bragging, isn't it? Her work has been published in journals including Memorial University of Newfoundland's Paper Mill Press and the University of Western Ontario's Occasus. She has received Western's Alfred Poynt Award in Poetry and 2 honourable mentions in Poetry London's annual poetry contest. And her latest work, Limit Our Lives, co-written with her sister, Marta Croll-Baehre, who you'll meet later if you haven't already, explores liminal lives in relationship to psychic and physical borderlands. So Emma, take it away.
So similarly to the first reader, I've always written poetry, and we were talking earlier actually about defining ourselves as writers or not, and we both said that we wouldn't necessarily call ourselves writers, but it's sort of an innate part of our beings and our experiences. So I suppose I will start with, I wouldn't say a love poem, but it definitely depicts the complexities of emotions, in relation to, well, would you say lovers? Maybe not. ones that I've loved in different ways. Anyway, I'll just jump into it. It's a little bit telling, so. Blue throat, I have left you watchful, too soon over bitter rocks and tempted. You have made wasteful noises in my blistered tympanums. In 3 dream days, hollow rings of ptarmigan eggs crouch beneath you. Steam to steam under cross-provincial circumstances. Your nostrils curl around my back as tree rings, content of solitude. That still on her of a chafed artery off the cove. See her before yourself. In gamey bones, you have lifted nothing, not yourself. Not sand or scabbed mines or vertebrae nested within you. Fertile shores dream shard, I slosh in the newt peters, muskrat-like, through unempty bogs. You will tell yourself, I have hung my skin on bark. Sickness is easier than want. Lily pad soles patter, run or rain on muckwater. Orifices, red and copper mule with specters. I have stood below a single tremoring tree. My limbo tongue shook it and sucked its pores. Hands apart, uprooted aphrodisiac. You say you could have been in love 3 times. I bend and sew my toenail shards, hardly feel the baby go. You will do anything to wrench my cotton tail, and you will forget me as the sun turns to milk. And you will remind me I have soured and imprinted myself again. So, as a relatively young person, I would say that I have a lot of work left to do with self-definition. And I think in that sense, sometimes navigating the romantic world creates some barriers, especially since as a twin, I have to learn to define myself as an individual, and that's what I've been doing over the last few years, especially sort of in my immediate adulthood. But yes, that poses problems in the romantic sphere sometimes, but I think that poem reflects sort of my ability to self-define in the natural world. As an East Coaster, I think that that's a really pertinent part of my identity as well. So the next poem that I will be reading is entitled Mein Fati. I realized I didn't give you a title for the last one, but I don't like titles really. I feel like it's difficult and overly strenuous to construct usually. So anyway, this is based in my relationship with my father, sort of his complex historical background, sort of cultural complexity, as you know, a baby born on the cusp of the Second World War. Mein Fati, pewter rivers break loose from your footsteps, slapping slush in late March. Dun suburbs curtain empty vein-like trees with spatters of twig and clear plastic. Bundles from grackles confused by the season's sticky warmth. Frigid noon harpoons your flesh, still gold like it had been before the war. Davor, your warped guitar strums. Der Krieg, my sister and I chirp like crickets that shriek only for delicate tympanums. Your ears couldn't hear them, but your eyes got clearer. Coke bottle thick became sharp blue-gray from your time on the Atlantic, where the ocean was always half slushed, half blue, half a conundrum. From Kitchener, smooth green yards like summer quilts. Pavement, half in dust from heat and pained feet. Alien toes pattering north from the blighted corpse of Stella. Twice over pink buds stemmed from our wombs. Summers always call for births. Young hips bloomed knapweed, cornflower-eyed babies whose wails, sirens, I carry the shudder, resonated to the hinterlands and mauve farm fields and into the refugee sky. I walk this trail still in winter's dust, my wool scarf, babushka, knots around my stinging face, grated teeth and a rumbling belly. I envision I am you, here, unafraid. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Okay, next up we have Erica McKeen, who is a storyteller, poet, and teacher living in London. She's a prose reader for Persephone's Daughters, which is a literary journal focusing on healing through art, and she's also a writer for The Mighty. In 2016, she won the Lillian Kroll Prize, and in 2017, she won first in the Occasus Prize, which is put on by the Occasus Journal at Western. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Word Horde, Occasus, Minola Review, and elsewhere. Erica, take it away.
Hello, so I'm Erica, as Andy said. Right now I will be reading you 3 poems. They were all written around the same time, and it took me a while to get each of them published, so they were published like really separately, but to me they all kind of work together. They all have to do with sort of trapped women, young women, lots of women doing monstrous things, so that'll be these poems for you. The first poem is called The Midwife. She is old and says her niece is speaking to her from her sister's stomach. She rambles on in dialogue such as this. Babies in the prickly wombs behind clouds don't listen to stories. They tell them to their mother's toes and cry when the endings aren't right. I mean when the beginnings don't fit, like their feet in the placenta, oil under little nails. Cry, they won't hear. They press their ears, but the belly's a brick you've locked yourself behind. Your growth is obscene, unimaginable, like dreams come to life. Too many monsters and flying children, hearing stories instead of telling them. Don't worry, she mumbles to her sister's ear. It will be still. Her sister shivers and pushes away. The midwife is old and dies inexplicably the next day. So that's one. The second poem here is called The Attic Has No To-Do List. 1. I have things and things to remember. Dishes to wash, toilets to clean, bookshelves to dust and organize, alphabetical. I have dinners and lunches and breakfasts to make. Monsters to chase? Beans will do for today. The bus is always late, ketchup for taste. My bike is broken, the back tire wobbles and won't inflate. I'm forgetting that email locked, caught in cyberspace. Mother gives rhubarb for dessert, no ice cream. And the books disorganized and the bathrooms aren't clean. I haven't touched the shower, stretching weeks. 2. In the attic, plain rice sits like maggots on my tongue. In the attic, stained ferrets crouch in corners, watching in the attic. The meds are working, but mix memories with my dreams. In the attic, doctors are people, and they cough and snore and puke in the attic. I find money and eat it. It's good on toast. In the attic, I cut my arm, and the blood is sour. In the attic, a frog lies inside out on the windowsill. In the attic, my face screams out of a computer screen. In the attic, there's no ice cream. I'll starve. 3. I'll starve for words. Give me ketchup for taste. I'll starve for words. I'll starve. I'll cut for words. Where's my ice cream, Mama? I want dessert. Cut for words. I'll starve. Pull out my eyelashes. Forget what sleep means. Mama, where's my... I'll forget for words. Lose my mind for words. Lose my mind. Lose my... Forget that I've forgotten. Mama, I've forgotten something. I'm hungry. Where's my... First do the dishes. Yes, Mama dear. And straighten your hair. and come over here. But Mama, sit down now. We have things to take care of. Mama, I've forgotten. Shut up. Baby, I mean, hush, baby, don't say a word. Shut up now, you'll get your dessert. So that's the second one. Thank you. And the third one here is called A Tea Party at the Cemetery. Drugged women around me, too old to laugh, nodding and losing their teeth in the grass. The trees are bent watching, breaking their backs, choking up acorns and calling us freaks. Freaks in the grass, they laugh and they laugh. The trees, they sprout molars and chatter and clack. Crack in my back, I'm breaking in half. The women are watching and melting their skin in the sun on the hill. It spills on the grass, the teapot is cracking. We've spilled every drop. We've spilled every drop. It was filled to the top. The teapot has cracked, I can't get it to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica. All right, next up is Kelly Creighton, who has been participating in London Open Mic Poetry Night since 2014. Her poems traipse between ideas like a zingara, and I'm not actually sure which zingara.
A zingara.
Thank you. I'm not even going to try again. Never resting longer than an eyelash, she meanders in and out of coherent language and identity, desperately attempting to survive each word. And by the way, I've read a lot of people describe their own work, and that is startlingly accurate and well put for someone describing their own work. So, good on you. And Kelly, that was really vague. What I mean is a lot of writers are really bad at describing their own work. Kelly's very good at describing her own work. There we go. Kelly currently lives in London with her son.
Okay. I'm a school teacher, and kids give you a lot of drawings all day long. So I started keeping them and writing on them and writing letters to people on them. And the poem that I'm going to read, I hadn't read it for a couple years, so I read it a couple days ago, and I just noticed that on the last page, the drawing that I kept was question marks with devil ears. And so I thought I just wanted to share that because that's really beautiful. And it was a 4-year-old. And then on this one is the Taj Mahal. So that has nothing to do with anything that I'm going to do, but I just thought it was beautiful. Okay. Haggard, harmony, hatred, harp, halo, hanging, preoccupations from the ceiling, under-realized collage of dégradé and first-degree nostalgia. H, him, H, hysteria, H, happen, hurt, heavy, horses, humor, half, heart, hemisphere, home, hallucination, heresy, hide, homeostasis, helix, halt. H, how. Adaptation, alone, antithèse, antipode, antibody, in my body, out my body, anybody. Allegria, all, or all is all. A, addiction. A, alienation. A, astral, abroad, abandon, aboard, appetite, adultery, awaken. Agitate, accept, abide, allure, annihilation, affinity. Afterglow. Agonize, atrophy. Air. A. Am. Isolation. Intelligence. Incendie. Idealism. Identity. I want to feel you. I. Immigration. I. Insomnia. I. Illumination, idiomatic, illusion, immunity, irony, idle, irrational, invasion, impatience, infestation, intimacy, intestines, infliction. Induce, incoherent, insufficient, intact, invract, inside. I. Geography. Germinate, gestation, green, gâteau, garçon, gueule, Georges. Ainsi croissait cette jeune plante, mi-sauvage et mi-cultivée. G, ghost. G, gypsy. G, give, grind, gloom, goat, govern, greed, guide, guard, glimmer. Gusto, grave. Grieve, guilt, gently glorify. G, going. Tears. Tremble, trip, transparent, transpire, transform, transfuse, transcend, transnational. T, torn. T, temptation. T, time, tome, tame, tender, tone, thick, throb, taste, twist, thrust, thrash, thrill, teeter-totter, 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 turbulent, tingle, T, two. Libertad, linger, left, liver, lice, lollipop, L, learn, L, lack, L, last, launch, lay, levitate, lick, lock, light, lose, lust, litany, llorona, leap, lunatic, la 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 la, alas, L, leave.
Thank you so much, Kelly. All right. Last up. I sympathize. I know you're last because we went in alphabetical order by first name. I'm always last because we always go in alphabetical order by last name. So you and I are kindred spirits right now. This is Marta, by the way. Marta Croll-Baehre is also a Newfoundland-born poet. Crazy coincidence. And has participated in the April Rabbit poetry reading, the Tangle Collaborative Arts event, and Poetry London. In recent years, her work has been published in Paper Mill Press, Tulips, Nom de Plume, and other journals. She is the 2016 winner of the Poetry London contest and the 2016 runner-up and 2017 first prize winner of the University of Western Ontario's Alfred Poynt Award in Poetry. Her latest work, Limit All Lives, co-written with Emma, as you already know, probes the relationships between liminal bodies and, this is how she describes it, they have different descriptions for the same collaborative work, which I find fascinating. So Limit All Lives is a probe into the relationships between liminal bodies and topographical, ideological, and cultural borderlands. And Marta's going to be doing couplets with Pen Kemp this month on November 23rd.
You're organizing it.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't count as shameless self-promotion when you're also promoting someone else up here, right? Okay, Marta, thanks for bearing with us and going last. You got it.
So I will be reading a shorter poem and a longer poem in this set. The first poem that I am reading probes London, Ontario, and specifically the corner of Dundas and Richmond, for those who live here, as a site of colonization and multifaceted pollution. I think, as Emma has already stipulated in her first set, that it's very difficult, particularly as someone who has grown up immersed in the natural world, to extricate environmental issues from other social issues. Four corners made bare, on Dundas and Richmond. Crossroads are contour lines that fracture native hands, root for half-smoked fag. On piss-stained sidewalks, sticks over primordial land that grows out, equinoctial before them colonials took it. Roads that spew out black fat onto flaxen farmland, sees them smoke green up on them four corners. No wampum but Richmond Row, Acres anchor, borders bank for selenite skull, lavender pagan Christ, a foul witchcraft for the white man, bitumen, bitumen, bit o human is black as muck. The next poem that I will be reading is a longer poem. It is split up into a few sections. It is simultaneously a literary response to a novel by Jean Rhys, in which an individual from the West Indies emigrates to England. Kyle, I'm sure you can perhaps gauge what I'm talking about. The poem also explores colonization and kind of the fragmentation as the result of colonization. And the poem's called The Basin Woman. A basin woman bumbles and bungles with wet nose below brown edge of planter nation. As some woodlouse and her roly-poly marsupium plunges bibble into rotted grain. Nation and blood are purple-gray, its curtain figure shiny janitor agape to latch gray sea. Number 2. Dark voyage to iron palmy. Racing beetles cling to railings per pom-pom to white blots and terrace houses. The gray predecessor with over a dozen hands molts in cold moisture from vellum cuticle. Limey, lyman, lie men above the brown who serves her family. 3. The basin woman with curd eyes like blind rabbit wriggles and niggles below Carib Basin. Pop flowers prickle, flicker into gray plenum. Inside the blocks, tinkery antennae, she carries 24 hours in her belly. The delirium in purple-gray sounds holy, holy, holy. 4. The small crowd with glittering green exoskeleton huddle as exotic fruit shade in the Carib Basin. Here's Tamapo, shout the crowd, in his ring of despair. White blots maneuver, man over the cool gray as the basin woman extends delicate mandibles to stroke purple-spangled sea. Blow rings, and drift away. 5. Loyal tropic heart below the purple bay, the Creole can be there and here. Little spiracle covers delicate mandible, fringed bristle slowly vibrates in warm water. She bumbles Moonlight Bay as she strokes moon belly with one finger, recalls the country where the orange tree flowers, où fleurit l'oranger. 6. The nation, a transparent mask set in the eternal grimace of disapproval. Plastered in islands, brown specks on glass, contorts in light to reveal bellowing Jan. His jaw wide, no eyes or arms, forged the unclimbable. The eternal masquerade, twisting and turning backwards and forwards to keep the horses in the ring. And finally, 7. A basin woman with a slobbering tongue dances forwards and backwards, counts 1, 2, 3, to the little triangle man. Clings to the brown edge of planter nation, cheeps chok-chok. Belly jiggles, black eyes bulge, babbles at the eternal masquerade, twisting and turning back and back and back. She feels the sun heat far from the iron palmy in this instant, all over again, all over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Okay, so a few questions, which actually Deemus and Emma started touching on already. Thanks. This is called London Writers Today. What better approach to take than to try to deconstruct each of those words in turn? Let's just say London either is, or there is a shared sense that London is undergoing something of a literary or writerly renaissance, but by a show of hands on the panel, who would consider themselves from London? Okay, and who would not? Three.
We're not going to be underdogs, Andy.
Yeah, I know. Oh, no, yeah, I put up my hand. We're good. Maybe let's even do the audience. Who here considers themselves from London? And who does not? That's crazy, right? Is it maybe there's something to that? I don't know. I mean, obviously, this is a small sample size. Even this room is a small sample size of people interested in writing, interested in literature. But maybe there's something about, maybe it's just the universities here, or the university and the college here. It's kind of a college town, brings people in, especially young writers. Maybe it's something about London lying kind of at the hub of southwestern Ontario, like just outside of the horrible gravitational well that is the neutron star that is Toronto, that sucks everything into it, right? Especially culturally. But I think there might be something to that. So having said that, I want to ask all of you, whoever wants to answer can, about your time in London, however long it has been, and how it's influenced you as a writer. So if you've grown up here, how do you think growing up here has made you the type of writer you are? And if you're passing through, then what has your time here been like? What has it given you? What opportunities or challenges has it given you? And in 25 years, when you look back on your London period, if you have that, how are you going to think about it? Those questions. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in London, and I lived for most of my life in the Masonville area, so over by Masonville Mall. And I think, during my time there, I didn't think that this was influencing my writing or sort of the way I looked at things. But now that I've moved away from that area, it's been very interesting how my writing deals with sort of that neighborhood. If you've ever spent any time there or just gone around there, the houses are all kind of the same, and the people on the outside are all kind of the same. And this was something that I just grew up with. It was everywhere. But then you realize that no two people are the same, right? So my writing has really focused on on revealing the fragility of that sort of situation, that these houses aren't the same. All the families and the lives inside are completely different. So yeah, that has definitely affected my writing more than I ever thought it would. Yeah. That specific area in London.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is saying that you're from London, I'm going to preface that with as being born here. However, philosophically and emotionally, that's a whole different story. So I think from London, what does that actually mean? So I was born, well, I wasn't actually born here, but I grew up here. Then I left for 10 years, in which time my life was transformed. And I came back kind of against my own will for lots of reasons. So that's when I started writing a lot, and I would say that it was coming from a place of hatred for London.
I don't think that's unusual. That's cool.
So I think that there's, it's a strange place. So you have to find people that are awake, but there's a lot of people that aren't awake in this town. That's how I feel. And so it forced me to kind of spend more time with my own self, thinking about things that I had experienced and taking the time to really address those things. And I would say because maybe I was a little bit culturally starved from the outside, I looked inside. I hope that didn't offend anyone.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Those are some friendly faces. We're okay.
Andy,
Yes.
hi.
Hi.
Emma, do you want to tag team the response? Sure, I was going to mention you in the dialogue anyway.
Okay, we'll just tag team the response.
So,
I put people in between you to try to separate you, but okay, do what you will.
I was going to say that my sister and I came to London because of Western University. Before then, we knew very little of London, Ontario.
Our grandfather was born here, actually.
Yes, but we didn't really envision it. We didn't really have sort of a mental topography, I suppose. So the first thing that we did when we came to Western University was try to get outside of the Western bubble. And we went downtown and we came up with the sort of definition of what we saw as post-apocalyptic 90s.
Yes, I think that was the running definition for a few years. Definitely the post-apocalyptic 90s vision of London, Ontario. I think, not to cut you off, but I'm cutting you off, I'm sorry. The London experience has been multifaceted. There are many good things. There is a strong arts subculture, a strong music subculture. We found many beautiful beings in this town.
May I add to that?
Yes.
So this is the turn. Marta and I would consider ourselves to be lightning rods anyway for strange occurrences. And I think that London, for us, has been an intense concentration of those strange occurrences.
And that might be a fantastic thing or a negative thing. I'm not really sure what the answer is there.
So this has been, sorry to sort of jump on the unfortunate underbelly of London bandwagon for a moment, but this definitely has been a site where we have witnessed a continuation of neocolonialism in a very sort of upfront way.
Yes.
As well as violence. And I think that coming from, a smaller town in Newfoundland, that was a very sort of abrupt turn into adulthood.
Yes.
You want to continue?
However, while these kind of experiences, these situations of violence in London have been difficult to kind of contend with, there have been positive things about London. I mean, though we were feeling a little landlocked when we first arrived, coming from the ocean, I don't know if any of you are from the East Coast, but the ocean is a big part of our identity. However, coming to London, we were able to locate new sites of nature, like the Sifton Bog, which is quite beautiful. Has anyone been to the Sifton Bog? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good place.
Who's clapping? I love that response.
It's a great place.
Ethereal.
So, Marta, I'm just going to sort of wrap up what we're saying. In conclusion, London is a significant hub for literary fuel. I'm sure you all know it. I cannot even begin to tell you sort of what has emerged in my writing from living here.
I agree. I think there has been a proliferation of my kind of writing capacity in a positive way since coming here. Lots of stories, lots of kind of
Clusters of eccentricity.
Yes, we'll end it here.
Yeah, anyway, thank you.
So, Deemus, are you ready to follow that up? Follow up that short speech about London with your own experiences?
Yeah, you guys pretty much covered it. Pretty well covered it. My experiences, I grew up here, so it's what I know. But yeah, from my experiences, I'd say because there's a university here and because there's a college here and King's Fanshawe, Western, and Brescia, and all the other schools, different students and different people come from all different walks of life to London, so it's kind of just like the transit space, I want to say. And in that, you meet a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. and it kind of changes your perception onto different things, on different subjects, whether they be like political or environmental or whatever it may be, right? So in my experience, London's cool for that example, but like you guys have also covered, there's a lot of negatives, obviously. However, again, in my experience, I grew up, for example, in a church. So I want to say a lot of my writing, to follow your question, to answer your question, a lot of my writing, I have a lot of, let's say, like, I'm not going to say spiritual, but a lot of like either anecdotes or like metaphors like relating to like biblical like text or such. So that's kind of just like been my experience. And I wanted to cover something else. I don't remember what I wanted to say though. Yeah, it's positive. It has positives and negatives is what I want to get to, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. We're already running out of time, but I kind of want to hear you guys talk more. Is it okay if we skip the second round of readings? Is that okay, or you guys is someone staring daggers at me? Let's do more questions.
Cool.
Can we? I've totally violated the whole setup of like, London Writers Today is mostly about the readings. Now I just want to ask questions. Cool?
Sure.
Okay. Deemus, maybe you want to start with this one. So there's a kind of the transition between talking about London and talking about the word writer is this. The description for this event, and I don't want to like throw the person who wrote that description under the bus at all, but it says you are all involved in like the London writing community. Is that crazy to say the London writing community? Is there one London writing community? Are there very separate ones? Is there something idealistic, or is there something to be gained in like trying to join different writing communities together, or is there something to be gained in having multiple competing writing communities that survival of the fittest sort of thing, or just like are competing for audiences, that type of thing?
I would answer this question with another question. It depends how you want to look at it. Because I would say that London has a bunch of different pockets of writing communities or of like artistic communities. Whether it be like open mic nights, like London's Poetry Slam, and like, yeah, different open mic nights. Just different pockets. So therefore, are we looking at it as like that, like a specific pocket, or because there's a cluster of pockets, like London's a pocket of writing communities itself? You know what I mean? Like it's
like pockets all the way down.
Exactly. Right? So, sorry, what was the question?
So like it's, okay, so I'll just, my card's on the table. I think the notion of a or the London writing community is probably wishful thinking, that there's one. Yeah.
Okay, can I say something about that?
Yeah, sure.
I've never met any of these people, so
Right.
how is it possible that there's one community if
Exactly.
we don't all know each other?
Precisely.
Should we all know one another? I guess that's the follow-up question. Like, should there be a London writing community? Or is it okay, or is there even something good about us writing here for 4 or 5 years or more and then suddenly meeting someone new?
I think it's cool that every event you go to, you meet someone totally different from a different community. Because to follow up like what I was saying before, London has its way of introducing you to different people of different walks of life, like we're just talking about now, where you don't necessarily although you grew up here, people have come from here from out of town, or just like I said, different walks of life, and therefore like you get to meet them, and I think that's a really, really cool thing. So that being said, like I don't necessarily think that there needs to be a specific like writing community, and if you're not part of that writing community, you're not known as a writer or whatever it may be. I think it's cool that there's different pockets, as long as like I think as long as everyone's accepting, and the idea that like I can go and attend this event and not have to worry about like any kind of like drama, I guess you can say.
Yeah, like all of the communities are open to new members or someone just visiting.
And as long as like no one's like too bougie either, you know, like like he's not like part of our community and like he doesn't act this way, so he can't like walk with us, so to speak. Like I think that's, as long as no one's like that, like it's fine, you know.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in? Go for it.
Yeah, so, as we have this conversation, I can't help but think of, imagined communities and sort of the idea of imagined communities in relation to literary communities, and the sense that over time, those communities sort of not assimilate, but coalesce in a way and at an ideological level. And I think that, on one level, it would be interesting for the distinct literary communities in London to communicate, but at the same time, I think that it creates sort of an environment of continuous transformation if the communities are left distinct.
Right.
Yeah, and the communities can sort of develop from one another.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like there's something to be gained by pulling together, but then if you're all pulling together, you're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, that would be
that's
the fear, I guess.
Really great. Let's shift just a little bit. I mentioned that you guys have kind of hit on one thing that I wanted to ask, whether you consider yourselves writers. So that's the middle portion of this panel title. Do you consider yourself a writer, first and foremost? What's at stake in calling yourself a writer or in saying that you write? Yeah, go for it.
I would not consider myself a writer. I would consider myself someone who loves self-expression and who loves art. I would follow that question and say that the fear in categorizing yourself as a writer is it boxes you in, so you're not allowed to express yourself in other forms of art. So if I like to, for example, I grew up playing piano, I grew up playing drums, I taught myself a little bit of bass, and if I consider myself to be a writer and I went to every single event and was like, I'm a writer, after a while I'd have that connotation around me that like I am a writer and therefore I would only be seen as a writer, I would never be seen as the piano player or be seen as the drummer or whatever it may be. I'm actually running into that right now, where I will go to different events or be booked for different events, and people will be like see me as the writer and only that. When right now, like I'm working on production, like music production. I want to learn how to make music, make beats and whatnot. And so I've been studying there for the last 2 years, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because I'm not necessarily great and good enough yet to go and perform my music, but it's a craft I'm working on, is what I'm trying to say. Like, for another example, say for Kanye West, who is an artist, he started producing his own beats and then started rapping or singing over them or whatever it may be. However, he wanted to switch over into fashion, but a lot of fashion designers have problem with seeing as him a fashion designer because he was known as a producer, So,
right, so if you start out identifying yourself as one thing, it becomes limiting in other people's imaginations of you.
Precisely, yes.
Can we do a quick sound off of the other things that you guys are in addition to a writer? If you would call yourself a writer. Like, we've all read poetry, or you guys all read poetry at the beginning, but I mean, Erica also does prose and predominantly, and like every other form. I remember maybe it's been 2 issues of Occasus now where Erica's got an entry in every single formal category. So yeah, other people. Are you a writer? What else are you?
I think for me, I always think of myself as a writer. Like if someone asks me, what do you do? I would say, I write. But if someone were to ask me, what do you do for money or what do you get paid for? It's a very different thing, right? Because I teach English in the early mornings online to little kids in China. So it's sort of in the same category, I guess, like the English language, but it's very, very, very different. So in my mind, I'm spending my days writing, but to other people, like society at large, I guess, my worth would come from being an English teacher. So I think that's the big divide, just like what will give you money and what will not. So for me, I'm always less focused on the money. So for me, I'm always a writer, but for everyone else, I'm kind of an English teacher.
I think that for me, the fear of acknowledging, I would rather say, okay, I write stuff, sort of, but I'm not a writer, because if you like acknowledge that, that gives people permission to quantify and qualify what you do as writing, and that scares the shit out of me. So I would rather kind of just exist in my own universe where this is happening, but I'm not really acknowledging it. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone.
I think it's the writer's masochism.
Yeah. But I would say, like, first and foremost, I'm a woman, and that's how I would define myself. I'm a creative person, I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, and then sometimes I make stuff, and it always comes out a little bit differently. Yeah.
Right.
So, sort of on that vein, I was thinking last night actually about my sense of identity in relation into my writing, and I would say it's an area that I'm confident in, but in a sort of precarious way. In the sense that, you know, as I mentioned before, I've written as sort of an imperative in terms of processing my existence, and I think to have that, you know, qualified or quantified, you know, by deeming myself to be a writer, that is very scary. And also I feel as though, I mean, as other people have been saying, that that's not necessarily my central sort of monolithic identity. You know, I write, make art.
You're looking at me.
I'm looking at you because this resonates with you as well, Marta.
I think it's kind of returning to the previous question. I think that there's something scary about referring to oneself as solely a writer. I think it's limiting, and I think then again
Essentializing.
It ties into the kind of masochism I'm feeling, you know, maybe not necessarily as though one is the writer, you know, the capital W. And I think, I mean, we do a lot of things. We're artists, musicians, performers,
Urban explorers.
knitters. We do a lot of things, and I think that I don't like limiting myself to one thing. I think that's scary. I don't think anyone should.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. You've really made me nervous about putting all my eggs in this basket.
Oh, sorry, Andy.
Okay, so to wrap up, a quick wrap up. Sorry, no time for audience questions. You can mob them afterward, though. That's the fun part. So, London Writers Today. I almost wanted to call this, like, to ask Josh Lambier if I could change the name to, like, London Writers Tomorrow, and then I realized that would be kind of insulting to the work you're already doing now. So let's just interrogate the word today by instead just ending with each of you mentioning a project that you're currently working on, something that's coming out soon. So this is the self-promotion section of the panel, and as one of my favorite podcasters says, to offset the ego karma. Can you quickly point us to some work that another writer or another artist is doing in London that you think we should be paying attention to? So let's just do a quick sound off. Do you want to start, Marta?
No.
Okay, Marta doesn't want to start. That's cool. Yeah, Emma.
Okay, I got excited because I started panicking about the second part of your question. But then I quickly, you know, recognized someone that my sister and I both hold dear. So, Andy, as you've mentioned, for our bios, my sister and I have been, we've written almost a chapbook style of poetic works entitled Limit All Lives. Marta and I have described it differently. I've discussed it in terms of liminal identities and symbolic borderlands.
I've kind of identified it as ideological, cultural, racial
Topographies.
yeah.
So,
When's that coming out?
when is it coming out?
Yeah, that's the question.
Hopefully in 2018, the next half of this year. And also, just to kind of put a plug in for Andy Verboom's Couplets series.
This is the only reason why I asked you to come here.
Oh,
kidding,
Andy,
go.
I wasn't going to do you, but of course it's you.
Okay. Well, let's say that you guys talking about limit all lives is each of you promoting your own stuff and
now.
pointing to someone else.
So the person who we were pointing to this morning is Andy Verboom. This
Marta, you're
individual
pointing to
here.
Andy. I need to promote someone else.
Okay, I'm pointing to Andy. Andy is a successful writer himself, and he is currently, among other things, organizing a poetry series, a collaborative poetry series called Couplets. Every few weeks, there is a duo who performs collaborative work together, and Andy facilitates the event, coordinates it,
And gets
hosts
all the credit.
it. He gets all the credit, and I mean, the poets are just the workers.
Yep,
Yeah,
easy workers.
the
Okay,
plebs.
all right, we need to, you guys are too loquacious. We need to move on.
Andy, can I just put in a
No, your ego karma is imbalanced. All right, Erica, do you want to go next?
Sure. As for myself, I'm always working on short stories and like a longer idea. So right now I'm working on a novella. There's no like plans to have it published, but I'm always working on something longer to hopefully get something that's good enough that's longer that I can actually publish. And as for somebody else, probably one of the only people I really enjoyed his work while I was at Western in the writing, sort of the creative writing courses and so on, was Tom Prime, but he actually just went off to do his MFA in BC. But he's a poet, so technically he's not a London writer anymore, but seems...
We can find his work online.
I don't know. I always encountered his work in the classroom. I know he's been published in different places. But yeah, Tom Prime, his poetry's kind of like visceral and gross at times, which I relate to. But yeah, he's always been somebody that's probably going to have some great things out in the future.
Okay, great, thanks. Deemus or Kelly, quickly?
So for myself, I would say I'm working on this, I don't know if you want to call it an EP, but it's just like, I guess a series of poems. I'm trying to put something on Spotify, and that's probably going to be out probably at the end of like this year, if not the beginning of next year. It's probably like 5 or 6 poems. And then someone who I would recommend. I would say a friend of mine who, again, like he moved away, so I guess he's not really from London. But his name's Kevon Davis, and he also writes spoken word, and he's cool.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm a single mother. I had a baby with a known sperm donor, and that has been crazy. So I'm working on a collection of poems from before, during, and after the pregnancy, and some visual pieces that accompany the poems. I mean, if I finish it before he's 18, like that would be, I'd be happy with that. It's gonna take a long time. I was gonna say you.
No, you're a single mom, so you don't have any ego karmic imbalance.
Yeah,
so you're good.
yeah.
Okay, can all of you join me in thanking these wonderful writers for being here today?
Thank you.
I really appreciate all of your work. It's very important and formally innovative, and